The Road Freight Association and other organizations in the retail and wholesale tyre sectors have become critical of plans by government to introduce a levy on the tyre imports into the country. The body says it's neither in the interests of the industry nor that of the customers. It had earlier met the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition about its anti-dumping duties out of concern that the local manufacturing industry could not meet local consumption demands. Joining us now to explain their position is Gavin Kelly, CEO of the Road Freight Association. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. The anti-dumping duty is levied at 38.8% on the imported price of tyres. What are some of your concerns?
Good evening, Impo, and good evening to all the viewers of Newzroom Afrika this evening. I think the first thing that really shocks us is that we know that in this country we do not have a tyre manufacturing industry that can meet the needs of all the vehicles in this country. In other words, the demand for tyres in this country. So therefore we import tyres, and we import tyres from a variety of destinations, China being one of them, but from the US, Japan and Germany. And now the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition has seen it fit to levy a tax or a duty or a protection levy on those tyres that are going to be imported from China. Now, the thing is that at 38.8% or 38.3%, depending on the tyre, and in our industry, in the freight industry, it's probably going to be closer to 22% in terms of the tyres. That's going to have a huge impact on the cost of transporting goods around the country. You can imagine what it's going to do in terms of passengers for those who use taxis and buses. So that's our concern. How, if we don't have the capacity, if we can only produce between 18 and 20% of the domestic need for tyres, how can we now suddenly put such draconian levies onto tyres being imported to keep the wheels turning in this country?
Why are these anti-dumping duties being implemented? Were you able to perhaps get more clarity from the department?
Well, the first point of departure for the department is to protect the local manufacturer and the local distribution. But as I've said, if we're not producing enough tyres, then this sounds a little bit offbeat or a little bit, I don't want to use the term ludicrous, but it doesn't make sense if we're importing so many tyres. So it is, in their words, to protect the local industry, but that is not really supplying tyres to the country.
So will these tyres that are locally manufactured also include the price hike?
Good question, Impo. And that's one of the things that we asked today, after having seen this new levy being gazetted, is what is going to happen with locally manufactured tyres. So are they now going to be, on the one end of the scale, 40% odd, 44% odd cheaper than those tyres? Or are these tyres, and remember, there are still tyres being imported from other countries around the world, are they going to quietly raise up to the same level of these tyres? And that's the concern, is that we have no other way of ensuring that vehicles remain on the road safely, can navigate, can brake, can remain roadworthy, and I'm talking across the whole spectrum of vehicles, but in our case, freight. If we're going to have these sorts of increases in tyres, that can and definitely will push people to push their tyres further than what is actually safe to do.
And, as we expand perhaps on this conversation, we look at the timing of this increase. I know that tyre prices incurred the normal annual increase in July already, and this is an additional increase. And looking at the timing, it's nearing the festive season. Tyres will need to be changed, rainy season, and of course speaking to the changes that will be needed for motorists on the road.
Yeah, the timing is actually a bit also not very well thought out. Now remember, we're all coming out of various sets of economic disasters, and COVID-19 had a huge role to play in that, but we've had a number of other economic disasters. We've seen a fair amount of unrest in the country. Business isn't where it should be, but you're quite right. We're going into the wet season, and there are going to be a lot of people who traditionally probably would have taken their end-of-year bonuses to go on a long trip, and before they went on a long trip, they would have looked at replacing their tyres on their vehicles, making sure their families were safe. Those bonuses aren't out there or aren't as common as they used to be. There's going to be far more people traveling back to their places of domicile or where they come from over the festive period, it's not really the right time to have done it. In actual fact, this shouldn't be happening. We should be ensuring we can supply tyres to South Africans by South Africans before we start placing these sorts of tariffs on imported goods.
So in rounding up your discussions with the department, what was the conclusion? Are they going to go ahead with it, or is there any way of going back on perhaps engaging further?
Well, a whole number of associations had discussions with the Department of Trade and Competition, Trade Industry and Competition. So this hasn't just happened this week. And a lot of those discussions, those proposals seem to have fallen on deaf ears because they have now proclaimed these increases. Our call from the Road Freight Association is for the Department of Trade and Industry to put this on ice, to, I don't want to use the term rescind their decision, but hold back on that decision and take a good look at what we actually want to achieve in terms of capacity in the country, grow that capacity, and then perhaps down the line we can bring these sorts of protections in if that's what we need to do to look after industry. So our point of view is right now withdraw those protection levies.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's leave it there for now. That was Road Freight Association CEO Gavin Kelly.